Great. Hi, Tier 3. This is going to be your first team VOD, and we're starting with the positive one. Yay. Alejandro's here. Okay, so we're gonna start with our first fight. Actually, do you remember how many minutes it was until you actually took it? Because I'd rather just go there. Okay, let me start with this fight then, because y'all actually do get kills and stuff here.
Where'd that come from? Shit.
Okay, so, for the most part, I'm going to keep things positive. There's a couple of things that I found a tad bit egregious that I wanted to comment on, so you can make sure that it stays positive in the future, and, you know, things are just more consistent across the board. So in this instance, the enemy obviously used window, and we did a good job of finishing the bat very quickly, and then we decided to rotate, which is good. The issue really with the rotation is that we're not terribly quick about it. We're not on speed because we start healing because our bat has been injured, right? And it just kind of takes us a little bit to really get there when we should have been faster. Like, we should already be speeding through this, and because of those things, because, you know, we were a little bit out of position, our Lucio gets picked, and then we're a little bit spread. It was a good dragon by them. I like the window, though. And we get a lot of good picks because of the window. And Mantis also, I know he just died, but he took a really great off angle over here. And I saw you did this a lot on this map, Mantis, and I really like it. Where you take these off angles and you really distract the enemy and take a lot of pressure off of your team. Not only that, but you oftentimes get kills for it, right? Like you clearly took out the BAP here. The only thing that I wish that we would have done a little bit better is moved in a bit faster. It was I was fine that our BAP stayed with the window, right, because he was using it and we're taking cover from the Bob. I think that you went up to contest the high ground a little too late, and I wish that we could have maybe coordinated our DPS pressuring the high ground together, so it wasn't just Mantis going on his own and then it was y'all going together. I think that y'all would have been more successful, and we probably would have won this fight because we made a lot of right decisions there and we got the picks. You know, but they used ults, and then they just managed to have the upper hand there. Okay, so on our next couple attempts, we get, like, someone always gets picked and we're forced to wait. We at least regroup, right, instead of keep trying to push, which is good. Clean, you could have helped our Rhine get back faster, I'll say, just by going to meet him. I think that would have been better. But we do get here, we have everyone, which is nice. And we go and push really quickly around the side, and Hanzo feeds, and we jump on him, which is perfect. That's exactly what we need to do. I'll say this rotation that we make is very intelligent, for a couple of different reasons. Whether or not it was planned, I just want you guys to know why it's intelligent, so again, we can do these things in the future. So, like right. In the back? Sure. So, what... Hmm. So what I want to say, and this is a little bit of a long flank, but for the goals that you're trying to have, right, which I think is a good one of, pushing their snipers and their DPS off of the high ground and taking it for yourself, because we've seen, like, the damage that, like, Mantis can do when we get him on high ground. I think that's a good goal to have. What I think y'all should have done, and I never saw you guys do this, and I'll just show y'all because it's easier, but, like I noticed, for instance, I mean, like the very first fight we had, right? Like we went through the little tunnel, and then we came up here and we got them on the high ground, but that didn't really do a whole lot for us because they were just kind of sitting back, right? Instead, all you need to do is really peek them the first time, right? To come through here, and y'all just need to come through. I guess you don't need to come down here. I forget where everything is. Y'all just need to come through really and go, down here, right? And y'all could even wrap around the back. Like this whole time y'all aren't being able to be seen, right? Because you're wrapping behind him. And then you're in the same position that you are now, right? Having taken really hardly any poke damage. So that's just something to think about in the future. Like, don't be afraid to take like a slightly longer flank that like makes sure that your team gets across. Because then y'all can just come up, clear, this section. It does give them time to move, but it gives you better point control, so it doesn't really matter. Because like what they had to do here, right? Because y'all finally did manage to make like a similar rotation, as they were forced to come to this side of point, and then their Ashe had to go all the way back here. And I mean, this is not a bad spot for Ashe, but your team is going to be on, for the most part, on this side of things, and so she doesn't have a good sight line here, right? So really you're just, you're giving your McCree and the rest of your team like a really good advantage by, kind of taking this corner definitively in the high ground. So I think y'all could have done that a lot sooner. But I am glad that you're doing it now. And I think that y'all collapse on everyone together. Obviously we used, half of our ults there to take it, which is fine. Then both support ults. It's fine that you used ults, they did too, and I'm glad that you'll finally took it. But I think, yeah, I mean, we just need to have those goals in mind in the future, right? And then know exactly how we want to I don't know, reach those goals, and then just have like a quick definitive plan of how to get there, because it shouldn't take y'all 4 minutes, right, to take the point. Okay, second thing I want to mention, again, this is kind of a both thing, but this is the second thing that I saw that was egregious. John Joseph, you've already told me that y'all's idea here, right, was to go on the high ground again and push them off. Exactly, and I love that. I love that you are thinking about that, especially when you have hit scan and people that like being up there in general, especially against Brawl, because, I mean, what the fuck are they going to do about it, right? Like, they either meet y'all there, or they just sit there and watch it happen. The one thing that I will say that I don't like is that y'all rotate very quickly up top, which is good, but Kirby, you as BAP either didn't get the memo, or you thought, what I'm thinking happened is, you heard the call to go up top, but you thought someone needs to push cart, so I'll stay down and push cart. Which normally, and I know I say this a lot, guys, whenever we're talking about like streets phases on any of the, hybrid slash, escort payload maps in general, is, streets phase, you have like a support or maybe a DPS endpoint, your tanks push up, and that way we're just constantly moving cart for free. The issue is that in this particular instance, they're already contesting cart, right? Like their Ryan is touching dicks with the cart right now. So you as BAP do not win that fight, and if they were smart, they would push you, right? Because you're on your own, your entire team, had a plan, and they're all following through together, and you stayed behind. And this is just badly timed. Again, a better team would push you here and kill you, and then they would just sit on cart and like let you guys rotate around, and then you guys wouldn't be able to do anything, right? Because like eventually you have to take the cart from them. So I really feel like the only reason why this rotation worked out so well in this instance is because their team was stupid, right? And they just kind of came back to meet you, but they can't actually meet you. So it worked, And now Kirby's pushing the cart for free, which is nice, but in the future we should definitely be smarter about just timing, right? Like the idea was there, it's all about execution. Yes. I mean, really all you need to do, like a lot of times, and you'll see this in like OWL and just, like on ladder, like the GMPC level, you'll see a lot of times, I mean, they're not always touching cart, right? Like what's more important is winning the fight than making sure that you're on cart all the time. Yes, it's important to touch cart, and yes, if you're not actively fighting, someone should be pushing cart whenever you're available to. Mhm. Yeah, you at the very least need to feel very secure that you're winning the fight before you go and do this. Now, at this point in time, right, where like you've already killed, you see how like you've already killed several people on their team, right? Like you've killed Hog, you're about to kill Hanzo, Ryan's very weak, you're putting them on the back foot and you're surrounding them. Like this is fine, and like we've already naturally kind of rotated back to cart, right? And that's when we start pushing. And in this instance, like for instance, I would say like Rag should be more, closer to you, and he should be pushing them better because he you see how his beam right now, like he can't really do anything. It's because Rag's too far back. But in this instance, like it's fine that like we're kind of like coming back to cart as we're winning the fight and pushing it. It was just, it was a little too early. So yes, I would commit to getting the better position first, right? And winning the fight first. And once the fight's just really broken open and, you know that like you're winning without a shadow of the doubt and you're pushing them back, that's when you start moving cart and like letting your team, clean up. Yeah, but I will say we do a really, really great job of surrounding them. Once we get our foothold, and we have the momentum, we do such a good job of coming around them. Like, right there we saw like Go and Rag, kind of clean things out on the left side in like the little donut, and just kind of like sweep that side and create that off angle, and we just kind of pinched them, right? And before that I saw Goat and I believe Clean on the right side doing the same thing, at the early, beginning of the fight. So I really like that, one of our DPS and our Lucio, and even our Zarya at times are, taking the initiative to, make sure that they're not taking off angles on us, but also creating those off angles for ourselves and pressuring them from a different angle. That's super important. So I'm glad that we're thinking about that. And like now we have the right idea. Kirby's on cart, making sure he's healing everyone, and our tanks are taking space up front. So this is exactly what we need to do. I would say, what I would do. This is a good ult, Kirby, because they were looking to recontest, right? They were getting closer. That McCree wanted to go up top, right, and maybe take that, and then they could maybe get back in touch. But they waited too long, and then you used that ult purely for zoning reasons, which is fine, and it made sure that you just took the point and it wasn't an issue. Whenever you are, though, just as a team, getting ready to push the final way into streets and then to secure that going into third. Obviously making sure that you have a couple of people on point and that your tanks are pushing up. But whoever's not pushing point, you want to make sure that you're putting yourself into an advantageous position if the fight does break off. What I mean by that is, for instance, my DPS, like you're not in a position right now to do anything, right? Now they do have to touch point, in which case you would be in a position to kind of harass them on point. So I'm fine that you're playing close. I don't need you to be up their ass right now, and you're kind of playing like, appeal DPS a little bit. Mantis, I think this is, however, your opportunity to start taking a flank angle I understand now why you're behind the window, because you're just wanting to capitalize on it, and you do end up, I'm pretty sure, getting this kill on McCree here, which is great. Just in the future, like for instance, if we don't have Bat Bolt there, right? If we don't have any ults, make sure that we're taking, like you could have stayed on high ground maybe, or you could like be closer to this side and like, pressuring like their BAP as he walks out, right? And just having a different angle. This is so important whenever they're recontesting, a point at any moment, because whenever you're about to push it in, right, to a point or it's OT, you get away with so much because they have to touch, right? Like, that's pretty much the only thing on their mind, beyond maybe a couple of them, is that I have to touch this point right now or I'm going to lose it. And that's typically, again, like your opportunity to take a little bit more aggressive angles. So if you don't have those ults, right, make sure that we're thinking about that and we're setting up properly so we can take advantage of their mistakes. But I thought you played that well. And again, I like that Lucio and the tanks are pushing up, pushing them back, which is super fine. Again, Mantis, good job with the off angle. Okay. I'll say that I'm conflicted about the Grav. I still don't know how I feel about it. I do think that it ended up working because it kind of bought you guys time, since you were down Rhine. So all in all, I think it's okay. But I absolutely think the hero of this point is Clean. That beat was huge. It absolutely saved Rag's life, and not only that, but it hit everyone else on your team that was alive. And then Mantis as well is taking, again, he's still on this off angle, and it's really just pressuring them as they come out of point, like constantly. Mantis kills 2 people here, like in the back, and it forces all of them to come back to deal with him, right? And then Clean is just able to push it in because like Ryan's busy with Zarya. So whether or not it was planned, we see the value of creating off angles, right? This is why whenever you play Brawl, it's sometimes beneficial when you're doing Brawl v Brawl to play, right, like the hit scan, like the McCree, or a tracer, like a flanker or something, or even a projectile DPS, because you're able to create those off angles on their Brawl. And it really, it pressures them so much. So I'm glad that a couple of us are thinking about it. Oh my god, it takes me so long to get back. Okay, so this is when I start liking our positioning more on this point. We're funneling their front line right into this left side because we're holding close left, and they decide they want to meet us. And especially because we have a Junkrat, it makes it really hard for them to come up, and that's why our Pharah, right, like the same thing as Mantis has been doing. Their DPS do a good job as well of trying to take off angles on you. Like, if we didn't have McCree, this would be really smart of their Farah, because she could just kind of come behind us on the left here like she's trying to do and just spam down into us. It's purely because we have Mantis on the high ground here, like waiting for her, that keeps her at bay, and it just does such a good job of pressuring them back. And Clean also typically does a great job of helping Mantis, right? And that damage boost really helps. The one thing that I think I would change is BAP should also be kind of doing this. BAP has the kit to not only be able to support his front line right, by healing and throwing immorts and all of that, and helping to break shield, but he's also capable of helping to shoot the birds. So I do think that Kirby, rather than standing again directly behind your tanks, you also could have been on high ground, perhaps on the left side of it, so you can, you have a good sight line of their team, and you can help break shield and help heal your allies, as well as help Mantis take care of the birds when they come up and give him a little bit of extra damage there. Same thing. I like the window purely because it forces them away from this corner. Well, it either forces them to stay here, right, and take the damage to the face, or it forces them to go around. Which, again, like I mentioned, is really advantageous for us because we have Mantis just kind of sitting on the right side waiting for them to make mistakes like this, because their birds physically can't jump up to him there. And so it's a great Shatter High Noon combo for sure, and y'all do a really good job of cleaning up after. Okay, so I believe that, Chandra, you told me that y'all had the idea to go over here, right? Mhm. So, and this is what I was saying when we originally watched this, when we were taking notes, is they clearly have a lot of ults, right? They have practically 6, and we don't have too many. So, I mean, this fight, I would be looking to use Valk, which we do, and Tyre, right? What I probably would do is initiate with Valk, so we can get Grav real quick, and then we could do like a Grav Tyre, and we could use that to kind of stop their momentum, right? Because mhm. Mhm. Sure. And I do think that, yeah, and I do think that that's a good idea. The issue is that they have ults, and we also kind of, again, like you said, our execution. So rather than going in this left room by ourselves, right? Which I think we said, like, he went in there and no one really called that they were taking space around him. Because if you notice, like, Farah, Mercy, and Sig come into this left side, and, like, I don't think any of us clearly really called that for Goat, and so Goat was just kind of a sitting duck. Whereas, if we're going to hold this right side, like we already talked about, which was good for Mantis, like, Goat could have just sat up here, right? Because, like, if Goat sits on this side, he is in line of sight of both of his healers, right? The tanks still have to push through your tanks to even try to get to him. And if the Pharah or the Echo tries to, like, jump over to contest him, Mantis is still here waiting to shoot him. So this would have been the safer and probably better call if he literally just tired, like, behind the boxes or even inside, right? And he's still near enough his team that you guys can help. Instead, like, he kind of just went off on his own. And so that's the execution thing that I think was different. The other thing I'll say is that for something like Tyre, especially when they have a lot of ults, and if you notice, like, they still have a little bit less than 2 minutes to take these, you really want to start basically baiting ults out of them, and then using your ults as kind of like a counter in a sense. Like if it was, OT, right? And they had a shit ton of ults and you only had two, yeah, just use your ults early and get those picks. But like if for instance, if y'all did get a successful tire and you killed 2, 3, team wipe, whatever, like they probably wouldn't have used any ults there, and then they'll just come back the next fight, right? But you are still delaying them. So it's a give and a take. Typically I like to use tire in these situations when they commit to the engagement. So they're on our front line, right? They're distracted, and maybe they've engaged with Nano. Like that's a common thing. They'll engage with Nano because they need to make this happen, or they'll engage with Copy maybe. And in that instance, like then we have someone to target with the tire. We can target like the nanoed target, right? We can target like their nanoed Sigma if they nano him, or we can target their Echo if she's copying, right? And then we have like a specific target for the tire, and we can just negate that ult, right? And I think that would have been the better call. So, yeah. This is just their ult dump, which is fine, even though, again, we didn't get our ults off as well as we wanted to. We still forced them to use a lot of theirs, which is beneficial for us. And we're at least still getting picks and getting ult charge, right? We got Shatter, almost. We have Grav. Rag didn't use Grav, which was great. I'm glad we didn't. Okay. I like that our DPS are very conscientious of high ground here. I think we do a really great job of that. We need to hold this high ground, right, so we can kill their birds. And we do a really good job of pressuring their birds the entire time. Also, I love, I do love that we shut down the res attempt, even though it was for Shatter. Again, it stops their momentum, and you don't die for it. Okay, so I will say Mantis, I don't think that the Shatter was the High Noon was necessarily needed here, because you do still have both heals up and Bubble and Immort and all that jazz for your Ryan, and he's at the corner. So Jondris is in a fine position here, where he is probably not going to die. However, I get why you High Nooned, right? To kind of zone them so they couldn't push into your Ryan and the rest of your team. So I like the thought process there. In that case, don't think it was needed, but I like that you're thinking about your ult and more than just, getting kills, right? That's super important. Okay. Next thing I wanted to say is this is another just example of positioning. For the most part on this point, I thought you did a good job of positioning yourselves where it directly benefits your team. Here in this fight, I don't like where we're standing. As I mentioned before, I think that our tanks are actually too pushed up here. And typically I would say, yeah, hold close, make it hard for them, but you have to think about your comp versus their comp always, right? Where does your comp shine? And where does their comp shine? And you want to make sure that you're positioning yourselves that give your DPS and the rest of your team that advantage over theirs, right? Because in this instance, right, we have 2 hit scan, and so our hit scan, like we were doing before, they want to stay up here, right? Both of them don't have to be up here. You can be, but at least one person should, which it looks like, Mantis is coming back to the high ground now. But like you see, Go is over here on this like low ground, and he doesn't really have a lot of sight lines, right? Beyond like the Pharah that's kind of in the air, you're really only able to shoot like, like the tanks or Sig Shield even, which isn't really a ton of value. And partly, though, I think that it's an issue because their tanks are pushed so far up, and so they're trying to take the engagement here, right? So, like, if your tanks are here and their tanks are going to be about here, like, the rest of their team is just able to sit behind choke and help them, and your DPS can't get a lot of value. Where if you held this corner, right, the rest of your team is behind you and they're able to take like the high ground around you, you know, both DPS or at least one. You know, Mantis would still be fine maybe sitting here, but I would definitely like to see Soldier on high ground at the very least. And that way they're forced to take the fight at the corner, which means their DPS are forced to, you know, kind of come around and put themselves into your hit scan sightlines. Because right here, and I told this to John Jost before, but I just want to show y'all, if you're taking the fight like you are and your tanks are up here, it's really easy for their DPS to just kind of like sit along on these natural cover areas like the roofs here and just kind of spam onto your team and not really have to peek your DPS much. It would be even easier as well. They could even go this way, right, and still have the cover of like the crane and just poke your tanks from the side and still not give any sort of sight line to your hit scan. So again, you really want to be thinking about, you know, what are my goals as my team? You know, what DPS am I running? Where do they want to play? And then really kind of, you know, trying to play around that. And that's why y'all lose this. Okay. However, next fight, again, we start doing better. So we come out and we all group on high ground, which is great. Now both DPS are on high ground, which is awesome. Not only that, but we're taking the fight right here underneath everything, right on payload. So, you know, tanks are clashing right there, which means, again, if you see the enemy tanks and they're here, you know that their back line is going to be around here, right? You know, like their Mercy and, you know, their Echo in the back, which is great for your DPS because, again, your DPS can just kind of play around, you know, on these things and just kind of, you know, pepper them from behind. It also means you can test the McCree over there, which is what we're doing. See, this is so important. Like, their McCree is forced down and can't take that high ground in the off angle because both DPS are very, very conscientious of him, and that's great. You know, we're really setting ourselves up for victory here because we're just playing, you know, high ground in our corners well. Again, John Jost, I thought you did a good job of backing up so you could block the bomb because you knew it was coming. And the shatter is massive. It's a good kill, Rag. Again, it's just because we're in such a good position, right? Like we're holding our corners very strong. We're giving each other, you know, we're giving our DPS the high ground, and we're able to just pressure them into these holes. Like even though like the visor, it wasn't, you know, maybe amazing. You know, and the Mercy was able to kind of like hide underneath, but she was low enough that Diva was able to come around and clean her up, right? And the tanks had the space to kind of move up. So you know, making sure that we're using our abilities and our ults like that to push them into corners and spots that, you know, away from their team and that are, you know, makes them easier to kill is really important. Yeah, and now we're just cleaned up. We're just cleaning up and good blocks. This is just really nice. Again, my one complaint, you don't need to be back there. I think that you were perfectly fine on the high ground, and I hope that you go back to it. Mantis, I'm fine with you skulking around underneath, and, you know, flash fanning whoever you find. Again, I like that, for the most part, we're on this side, right, but like our Diva and our McCree are on the opposite side to kind of pressure them from those areas, so we do a really good job with that. And they don't know who to focus on because of it, right? So yeah, I think for the most part it went really well. I think that y'all had good ideas. Some things could have been executed better, of course, but the thought process is there and the instincts are there. Mantis and Clean, you absolutely do phenomenal jobs about knowing your role, right? Knowing where your role shines and helping your team and enabling your team. And for the rest of you, tanks, I thought you did a good job of maintaining the front line. Just think about again where you're wanting to play a little bit more, and I think it'll go better. And same thing, with everyone else. Just knowing your role and knowing how your role shines will really help you guys in the future. And that's it. Mhm. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we do the team VODs, right? Even if we're just talking about, for the most part, like the good things. Because like you said, it's important to notice what we are doing already and making sure that that becomes a good habit, right? And the things like, the instances where we have good ideas, but, we just didn't quite execute correctly, we weren't sure what went wrong. That's why we review them and, we can clean them up next time and make sure those good ideas, actually work out in our favor. Okay, well that's our first one, and we will get to you guys with the next one.